नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिने नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यादि पाश्चात्य वेशतारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत वेदांत श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे सर्वशास्त्रार्थीयुक्त सर्ववेदिक सत्फल सर्वसिद्धांत सर्वलोकैक धर्मप्रद सर्वभागवत प्राण श्रीमद्भागवत प्रभु कलिध्वांतोदितादित्य श्रीकृष्ण परिवर्तिता परमानंद पाठाय प्रेम वर्षक्षरायते सर्वदा सर्वसेव्या श्रीकृष्णाय नमोस्तु मे मदेक बंधो मत्संगी मद्गुरु मन्महाधन मन्निस्तारक मद्भाग्य मदानंद नमोस्तु ते असाधु साधुतादाय शोच्यता कर हा नमंस कदाचिन् मां प्रेमणाहृत कंठे स्फुरा ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Day 3.26 point, not 3 point. Is this correct?
27:11.
7.11. मुक्तलिंगम सदाभासम असति प्रतिपद्यते सतो बंधुम असच्चक्षुः सर्वानुस्यूतमद्वयम्. A liberated soul realizes the absolute personality of God, who is transcendental and who is manifest as a reflection even in the false ego. He is the support of the material cause and he enters into everything. He is absolute, one without a second, and he is the eyes of the illusory energy. That means he is the revealer of the illusory energy. Tam kidrisham. He realizes the Supreme Soul. That was noted in text 10. What is the nature of that Supreme Soul? That is stated here. Muktaihi lingyate gyayate iti tam. Muktalingam indicates that he is realized by the transcendentalists. Muktaihi lingyate gyayate iti tam. Iti anena anubhava jnana vishayibhutatvam tasya uktam. In other words, the Supreme Soul becomes an object of experience, direct experience. Asati nashvare jagati saddeva bhasate antaryamittvena iti tam. And he shines within this temporary world as the inner ruler of this world. Sadabhasam. Asati sadabhasam. Satah karanasya bandhum pattim. Asatah karyasya mahadadehi chakshuhi iva prakashakam. Asatah bandhum, satah bandhum, asatah chakshuhi. That is how it is split. He is the master of Sat, meaning the cause. And he is the revealer of the effect, Asat. The effect refers to Mahatattva and other products. Sarveshu karya karaneshu anusyutam paripurnam. He is interwoven into all the causes and effects. Causes and effect itself refers to that entire series, starting with Pradhana, then Mahatattva, and then from Mahatattva, then Ahankara, like that. That entire chain. So he is interwoven into it in the sense that he is present inside each of them in his full perfection. Advayam is without a second, is one without a second. It means he is singular. Iti visheshana panchakena anubhava jnana purvat dashayam tasya shastrota jnana vishayibhutatvam jnapiti. So in this way, he is described in 5 ways. And before one comes to the point of realizing him as described here, first of all, one should have a theoretical understanding from the scriptures about him in all these 5 ways. A pure devotee can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything materially manifested. He is present there only as a reflection. But a pure devotee can realize that in the darkness of material illusion, the only light is the Supreme Lord, who is its support. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the background of the material manifestation is Lord Krishna. And as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Krishna is the cause of all causes. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Supreme Lord, by his partial or plenary expansion, is present not only within this universe and each and every universe, but in every atom, although he is one without a second. The word Advayam, without a second, which is used in this verse, indicates that although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is represented in everything, including the atoms, he is not divided. His presence in everything is explained in the next verse. 12 and 13 go together. Yatha jalastha bhasa sthalasthena drishyate swabhasena tatha suryo jalasthena divistita. The presence of the Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. Prathamam Jivatma Eva. Okay, right. Since 12 and 13 are together, what should I do? I'll read the text and translation of 13. Then I'll go to Sarartha Darshini, then I'll read the purports for both of them. 13. Evam trividhankaro bhutendriya manomayai swabhasair lakshito nena sadabhasena satyadrik. The self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego and then in the body, senses, and mind. Yes.
Prabhu, in 11th verse purport, when it is written that he is present there only as a reflection, means he is present in material world only as a reflection. So, what exactly this reflection means? He himself is not there?
He himself is there, but he has expanded himself into this, just as a reflection is an expansion of the prototype. So within matter, the super soul is an expansion. The original Bhagavan is in the spiritual world. Bhagavan is in the spiritual world. Paramatma is in this world. Vishwam Paramatmanaha. Paramatma is present within the material world as a reflection. He is a reflection of the Supreme Being.
But he is also as good as Bhagavan in the sense that reflection.
By his inconceivable potency, he is also that. The living entities in some scriptures are also described as reflections, but they're reflections in a different sense.
Okay, bro.
Okay. Ahankara upahitena shuddha brahma pratipattim sadrishtantamaha. How the pure absolute truth is present with the within the false ego element, or with the false ego element as his material designation. Upadhi is now explained with an example. Yatheti. Jale sthitah abhasah surya pratibimbaha yada grihantarvarti bhittau sprati. Just as the reflection of the sun in water shines within the walls of a house, within the wall of a house. Tada grihakkonastitaihi purushaihi भित्त्यादौ स्थले स्थितेन स्व आभासेन सूर्य प्रतिबिंबेन यथा प्रथमं जलस्थ आभासः अवदृश्यते. So first of all, the people who are inside the house, they see the reflection on the wall of the house. Wall is an example. It might be towards the ceiling also. Different possibilities are there. So first they see that, and then they understand that the water is the one that is reflecting the sun. Gaganasthasya grahamadhye pratibimba ayogat. Because the sun itself is in the sky. There would be no other way to explain how the reflection takes place inside a house. Cha arthe tata shabda yatha cha iti artha. Yatha cha jalasthena divistitaha suryaha lakshate. Just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. That was actually Shridhar's song. Okay, let me look at this. Pratham Jivatma eva kena prakarana gyatavyaha. First of all, how the Jivatma can be realized. Tatastena Paramatma cha iti atra sadrishtantamaha. In the same manner, the Paramatma himself has to be understood and realized. So the example is given here. Yatheti. Jale sthita abhasa pratibimba akaraha nishkampaha. The reflection on the water that does not shake. Surya prakashaha yada grishantarvanti swachha vityado sthale spurati. And it is seen within a clean wall, etc., within a house. Tada grihakonasthitai purushaihi prathamam sthalastha abhasa darishyate. Tatascha kutoyam prakasha iti paramrishadbhihi tena sthalasthena swa abhasena shofana surya prakashena jalastha. So then when it's second, the people inside the house, they are in various corners of the house. They see the reflection on the ground or on the walls. So then when they start thinking from where this reflection came, so then they understand that shining illumination of the sun is actually coming from the, is reflected from the water. And that does not shake. Abhasaha avadrishyate, lakshiyate. Punaschayam abhasa kuta iti tatha. Tena prakarena tena jalasthena swabhasena shovana prakashena divistita surya avadrishyate. And then again when they contemplate, okay, from where is this illumination coming? How is it coming from the water? So then they understand, okay, the illumination is actually coming from the shining sun, which is actually in the sky. Evameva vivekibhihi prathama bhutendriya manamsi chaitanya vatvat paramatma prakasha vanti drishyante. So initially, so in that way, discriminating persons, they understand that the gross elements, senses, and mind in them there is the presence of consciousness which reveals the Paramatma. Tatasya jadeshu anu Paramatma prakashakaha ayam kutaha asti iti bhutendriya manomayaihi bhutendriya manovartibhihi swa abhasaihi trivrit ahankara upadhitvena vartate yasya sa jivatma Paramatmana prakasha sambhuta kirana rupa lakshitaha. So in that manner, from where is this Paramatma himself perceived? I mean, on what basis can we perceive that? That is because the Jivatma himself has accepted the threefold false ego as his material designation. Because this gross elements, senses, mind, they're simply products of the three types of ahankara. So then the Jivatma is understood to be a ray coming from the illumination of the Supreme Soul. Tataha cha anena jivatmana sad abhasena sata bhaktimata prakashena satyadrit satyajnana ananda paramatma lakshita upalabdhaha. And then by this jivatma, when he engages in proper devotional service, then that super soul who is filled with true knowledge and bliss, he is realized. He is realized by the influence of proper devotional service. These purports will make things a little bit clearer. The example given here is perfect. The sun is situated in the sky far, far away from the surface of the earth. But its reflection can be seen in a pot of water in the corner of a room. The room is dark and the sun is far away in the sky. But the sun's reflection on the water illuminates the darkness of the room. A pure devotee can realize the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything by the reflection of his energy. In the Vishnu Purana, it is stated that as the presence of fire is understood by heat and light, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although one without a second, is perceived everywhere by the diffusion of his different energies. It is confirmed in the Ishopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul, just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. The conditioned soul thinks I am this body, but the liberated soul thinks I am not this body, I am spirit soul. This I am is called ego or identification of the self. I am this body, or everything in relationship to the body is mine, is called false ego. But when one is self-realized and thinks that he is an eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord, that identification is a real ego. One conception is in the darkness of the threefold qualities of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the other is in the pure state of goodness called Shuddha Sattva or Vasudeva, not Vasudeva. When we say that we give up our ego, this means that we give up our false ego, but real ego is always present. When one is reflected through the material contamination of the body and mind and false identification, he is in the conditional state. But when he is reflected in the pure state, he is called liberated. The identification of oneself with one's material possessions in the conditional stage must be purified, and one must identify himself in relationship with the Supreme Lord. In the conditioned state, one accepts everything as an object of sense gratification, and in the liberated state, one accepts everything for the service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness devotional service is the actual liberated stage of a living entity. Otherwise, both accepting and rejecting on the material platform or in voidness or impersonalism are imperfect conditions for the pure soul. By the understanding of the pure soul, called Satyadrik, one can see everything as a reflection of the Supreme Personality of God. A concrete example can be given in this connection. The conditioned soul sees a very beautiful rose and he thinks that the nice aromatic flower should be used for his own sense gratification. This is one kind of vision. The liberated soul, however, sees the same flower as a reflection of the Supreme Lord. He thinks this beautiful flower is made possible by the superior energy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it belongs to the Supreme Lord and should be utilized in his service. There are two kinds of vision. The conditioned soul sees the flower for his own enjoyment, and the devotee sees the flower as an object to be used in the service of the Lord. In the same way, one can see the reflection of the Supreme Lord in one's own senses, mind, and body, in everything. With that correct vision, one can engage everything in the service of the Lord. It is stated in the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu that one who has engaged everything, his vital energy, his wealth, his intelligence, and his words in the service of the Lord, or who desires to engage all these in the service of the Lord, no matter how he is situated, is to be considered a liberated soul or Satyadrik. Such a man has understood things as they are. 14. Why is this like this? 14 to 16, I guess. 14 to 16. Again, I'll do the same thing. Yes.
So in the purport to 13th verse and the translation, I am unable to see any connection. Or maybe I missed it.
The sun is first of all realized as a reflection on water. And again as a second reflection on the wall of a room. So this is a first reflection, second reflection. Okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
That much is clear.
Yes, Prabhu.
So the pure devotee realizes the presence of the Supreme Lord by reflection in the same manner.
Okay.
It's just various reflections, that's all.
But it says in 13th verse that self-realized soul is reflected now.
Where?
In translation to verse 13.
That's okay. Self-realized soul is also reflected because he's a ray of the super soul.
Mm-hmm.
In that reflection, the reflection also is simply illumination. No, and illumination is made up of rays. So that exact process, how it happens, Vishnu Chakravarti writes it here. First one realizes the basic presence of the super soul, because everywhere he notices that there is consciousness within the mind, within the senses, within the gross body of the body. From where that is happening, or that is life. So that life indicates the presence of the Supreme Soul. But the one who is perceiving that Super Soul, what is his relationship with the Super Soul? He is, if the Super Soul is considered to be the sun, then this individual soul, the finite soul, is considered to be a ray, kirana rupaha. He is a second reflection. Paramatma is the first reflection.
Okay, bro.
It can be deciphered. It's not too difficult. Okay. 14, 15, 16. I'll read the texts and translations first. Then look through Sarada Darshini, then go through the purports. 14. Bhuta Sukshmendriya Mano Buddhyadishviha Nidraya Lineshhu Asati Yas Tatra Vinidro Nirahan Kriyaha. Although a devotee appears to be merged in the five material elements, the objects of material enjoyment, the material senses, and material mind and intelligence, is understood to be awake and to be freed from the false ego. 15. Manyamanas anashto nashtavan mrisha nashte hankarane drashta nashtavitta ivaturaha. The living entity can vividly feel his existence as a seer, but because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost, like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distressed, thinking himself to be lost. 16. Evam pratyavam vrishya sau atmanam pratipadyate sahankarasya dravyasya yovasthanam anugraha. When by mature understanding one can realize his individuality, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. Nano arkena chakshusha eva arka iva atmana eva bhaktimata jnanena paramatma anubhuyate iti satyam janimaha. Here is a question that we know that Shishya, there's something wrong with this. Okay, wait, I think that's a read. Let me fix it. This is what 14. What 12 to 16 is the cluster? Now 12, 13 is a cluster. 14, 15, 16 is a cluster. Arcano Chaktusha eva, Arka eva. Okay, here is the objection. Just as the eyes are related to the sun, so through knowledge that is filled with devotion, the Jivatma of a Jnani experiences the Paramatma. We know that. But Kintu Chakshushrotradikamiva tam Jivatmanam Trivrit Hankarat Prithakbhutam Sakashat Dadarsha. It's not an objection, it's simply a consideration. It's an introduction. But then the Jivatma is distinct from the threefold false ego. It is distinct from the eyes, ears, and so on. And that will be seen. So in response to this, he speaks 3 verses, beginning with text 14. Bhutadishu asati anabhivyaktatvad asatulya pradhane, because it is not manifested within the gross elements and so on. Nidraya lineshu satsu yas tatra tata vinidraha nirahankriyah tam atmanam jivam pratipadyate lokaha anubhavati iti tritiyena anvaya. Here Bhutadi first of all refers to the elements, senses, and so on. And here asati, that refers to being within this asat. Now pradhana is that. Pradhana here refers to the prakriti. So now when all of them are merged into prakriti, so then you have the living entity. The living entity is actually the seer. He is the conscious one. The other ones are not conscious by themselves. So he is awake. And when he is freed from ahankar, nirahankriyaha, then he attains himself. That means he realizes himself. This is the experience of the world. ननु अलं तर्हि योग अभ्यासेन मनोबुद्धि इंद्रियादि लये सति यह केवल आत्मानुभव योगाभ्यास फलरूपः तं खलु निद्रैव कारयति इति. So now one may say, then what is the use of all this yoga abhyasa? If experience of oneself as a soul takes place when mind, intelligence, senses, and so on are merged into pradhana or prakriti, then that happens at sleep. So the result of engaging in such severe practice of yoga comes about simply at the time of sleep. In response to that, he says, Manyamana. Although a devotee appears to be merged in the 5 material elements, the objects of material enjoyment, the material senses and material mind and intelligence, is understood to be awake and to be free from false ego. Manyamanaha. The living entity can vividly feel his existence as a seer, but because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost, like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distress thinking himself to be lost. Tada bhutadinam ahankarya sacha layad ahankarane. What is ahankaryana? Bhutadinam ahankaryanam. Yes, these are actually products of ahankara itself. अहंकारशीला अहंकरणे नष्टे सति द्रष्टा जीवः दृश्यानाम् अभावात् दर्शने नष्टे सति स्वयं अनष्टोऽपि आत्मानं नष्टवन् मृषा मन्यमानः य इति अविद्यावन्तं जीवं सुषुप्तौ उत्प्रेक्ष्यते नष्टवित्त एव न तु नष्टवित्त आसक्तिः इति अर्थः. No, at the time of deep sleep, something else takes place. At the time of deep sleep, the products of ahankara, they're merged in pradhana. That is true. But at that time, the jivatma has nothing to see. He does not experience anything. So it is as good as saying that his experience of matter is lost, even though he himself is not lost. He thinks that everything is lost. This is a living entity who is caught up by avidya. And here he has been compared to a man who has lost his wealth, but who has not lost his attachment to the wealth. Ayam artha. This is the point. Yoga abhyasena jiva upadhi bhutanam tattvanam atyantike laye satyeva jivaha sviya rupanandamayaha bhavati. Only when the material designations of the jiva, which refers to all of these elements, such as the gross elements and so on, only when they factually merge into Prakriti, then the Jivatma is able to experience himself in his original form with bliss. Natu naimitikayo sushukti pralayayo, not through intermittent experiences like deep sleep or universal dissolution. Yatha, for instance, vitte nashte sati, akinchana, what is this? Akinchana. It must be akinchana anam sukha. Right. Akinchana sukham na bhavati. It must be akinchana anam sukha. किंतु वित्तासक्तो एव नष्टायां सत्यां तथैव जीवस्य नैष्कर्म्यं विना सुषुप्त प्रलयोर उपाधिनाशेऽपि न स्वरूप प्राप्तिः. So just as when wealth is lost, then one does not experience the happiness that is experienced by those who possess nothing. Only when the attachment to wealth is destroyed, only then one experiences that happiness. Similarly, tathaiva jivasya naishkarmyam vina, until the jiva comes to the point where he is freed from karmic reactions. Sushupti pralayor upadhi nashe api, even though at the time of deep sleep or at the time of universal dissolutions or worldly dissolutions, even though the material designations, upadhis, are lost, he does not attain his original status. Naishkarmyam cha bhakti jnanabhyam vina na bhavet. And that status of being freed from karmic reactions does not take place without bhakti and jnana. Iti sushuptau avidya tat samskaranam cha vidyamanatvat. Because at the time of sushupti, avidya exists still, and the mental impressions caused by avidya, they are also present around the jiva. च विद्यमानत्वात् केवल आत्मानुभवो अपि अकिंचकरः इति. So the experience of the self as being distinct from all of these products is insignificant. And sushuptau na kinchit anubhuyate. The question arises that but at the time of deep sleep, nothing is experienced. This is a reference to 16. When by mature understanding one can realize his individuality, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. Ma evam aham sukham aswapsam na kinchit avedayisham. Why does it say avedayisham? Avedayisham must be ordinary dialect. Vedisham seems to be the Vedic dialect. Kinchit avedisham. No, avedisham only. All the commentators use this expression only. इति विशेष ज्ञानं विना केवलस्य आत्मनः प्रतिसन्धानात् इत्याह. It is not that nothing is experienced at the time of deep sleep, because I slept happily and I did not experience anything. From this, there is the introspective understanding that the isolated soul also exists without being specifically aware of anything. Evamiti. That is conveyed in text 16. Kimcha sa ahankarasya dravyasya bhutendriyadi sanghatasya dehasya yaha avasthanam ashrayah yam eva jivatmanam ashritya ahankara adeya bhokeshu visheshu pravartante ityartha tatha ya eva jivatma anugrahah स्वीय भोक्तृत्व लक्षण धर्म प्रदानात् अनुग्राह्य है इत्यर्थः. Let me take this out. Let's see how it is explained here. Okay, so this very soul, it reveals this totality of, or the chain of material causes and effects, beginning with ahankara itself. And it is this very soul which is the support of this arrangement. So ahankara itself is considered an object of experience. So the jivatma can then be realized as something different from false ego, but at the same time, it is the seer of the false ego itself. Sahankara dravyasya, of the situation accepted under false ego. Then the situation he accepts under false ego, that refers to the jivatma being the support of the totality of the senses and everything put together. That is the body. See, the gross body, the senses, mind, intelligence, chitta, all of them put together, along with false ego. That is the body. But all of them requires the jivatma for its support. It is only because of the jivatma's presence that ahankara and the others, all of them, they function. That is the point. And here anugraha indicates that that very living entity himself, he is the one who brings about this experience of matter. Anugraha here refers to anugrahya. Let me read the Anvaya here just for that portion. Ya anugraha, prakashakaha. Okay. So anugraha means the assistant, the one who reveals, the one who brings about awareness. Ya anugraha prakashakaha avasthanam ashrayam tam atmanam aso viveki janaha evam pratyavam rishya vicharene vivichya atmanam pratipadyate prapnoti. So when one distinctly understands that the Jivatma is the revealer and is the support, then discriminating persons, they attain that soul. They attain the soul means that they realize that soul. In his commentary, in his Anuvad, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has interpreted this to refer to the Paramatma. The word Atma is used, can be interpreted as Jivatma, can be interpreted as Paramatma also. This is how he translates this verse, text 16. Eru Bishesh Bhave Vichar Purva. So when one specifically analyzes the situation, Purvokta Bhavajukta Purush Karja or Karan Samoher Vakasha or Ashray, say Paramatma ke prapta ho. Then that person who has developed this conception, he attains the Paramatma, who is the revealer of the effects and the causes in their totality, and who is their ultimate shelter. The ultimate shelter is the Paramatma, but the individual shelter is the Jivatma. Just as the ultimate perceiver is the Paramatma, but the individual perceiver is the Jivatma. Individual perceiver means he sees only his body. He does not see anything beyond his body. Ultimate perceiver means one who sees everything. Okay. 14, 15, 16, purport. The explanation by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of how a person can be liberated even in this body is more elaborately explained in this verse. The living entity has become Satyadrik, who realizes his position in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead may remain apparently merged in the 5 elements of matter, the 5 material sense objects, the 10 senses, and the mind and intelligence, but still he is considered to be awake and to be freed from the reaction of false ego. Here the word Leenaha is very significant. Leena is very significant. Leena is a source of the word Leeneshu, merged. The Mayavadi philosophers recommend merging in the impersonal effulgence of Brahma. That is their ultimate goal or destination. That merging is also mentioned here. But in spite of merging, one can keep his individuality. The example given by Jiva Goswami is that a green bird that enters a green tree appears to merge in the color of greenness, but actually the bird does not lose its individuality. Similarly, a living entity merged either in the material nature or in the spiritual nature does not give up its individuality. The real individuality is to understand oneself to be the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. This information is received from the mouth of Lord Chaitanya. He said clearly upon the inquiry of Sanatana Goswami that a living entity is the servitor of Krishna eternally. Krishna also confirms in Bhagavad Gita that the living entity is eternally is part and parcel. The part and parcel is meant to serve the whole. This is individuality. It is so even in this material existence when the living entity apparently merges in matter. His gross body is made up of 5 elements. His subtle body is made up of mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness. And he has 5 active senses and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. In this way, he merges in matter. But even while merged in the 24 elements of matter, he can keep his individuality as the eternal servitor of the Lord. Either in the spiritual nature or in the material nature, such a servitor is to be considered a liberated soul. That is the explanation of the authorities, and it is confirmed in this verse. Only in ignorance does a living entity think that he is lost. If by attainment of knowledge he comes to the real position of his eternal existence, he knows that he is not lost. An appropriate example is mentioned herein. Nashtavittai Bhatura. A person who has lost a great sum of money, they think that he is lost, but actually he is not lost. Only his money is lost. But due to his absorption in the money or identification with the money, he thinks that he is lost. Similarly, when we falsely identify with matter as our field of activities, we think that we are lost, although actually we are not. As soon as a person is awakened to the pure knowledge of understanding that he is an eternal servitor of the Lord, his own real position is revived. A living entity can never be lost. When one forgets his identity in deep sleep, he becomes absorbed in dreams. And he may think himself a different person or may think himself lost. I think this transcription is not proper. When one forgets his identity in deep sleep or when he becomes absorbed in dreams, he may think himself a different person or may think himself lost. That would be a better transcript. But actually, his identity is intact. This concept of being lost is due to false ego, and it continues as long as one is not awakened to the sense of his existence as an eternal servitor of the Lord. The Mayavadi philosopher's concept of becoming one with the Supreme Lord is another symptom of being lost in false ego. One may falsely claim that he is a Supreme Lord, but actually he is not. This is the last snare of Maya's influence upon the living. To think oneself equal with the Supreme Lord or to think oneself to be the Supreme Lord himself is also due to false ego. 16. The Mayavadi philosopher's position is that at the ultimate issue, the individual is lost. Everything becomes one, and there is no distinction between the knower, the knowable, and knowledge. But by minute analysis, we can see that this is not correct. Individuality is never lost, even when one thinks that the three different principles, namely the knower, the knowable, and knowledge, are amalgamated or merged into one. The very concept that the three merge into one is another form of knowledge. It's a conception. Conception is a form of knowledge. And since the perceiver of the knowledge still exists, how can one say that the knower, knowledge, and knowable have become one? The individual soul who is perceiving this knowledge still remains an individual. Both in material existence and in spiritual existence, the individuality continues. The only difference is in the quality of the identity. In the material identity, the false ego acts. And because of false identification, one takes things to be different from what they actually are. That is the basic principle of conditional life. Similarly, when the false ego is purified, one takes everything in the right perspective. That is a state of liberation. It is stated in the Ishopanishad that everything belongs to the Lord. Ishavasyamidam sarvam. Everything exists on the energy of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Because everything is produced of his energy and exists on his energy, the energy is not different from him, but still the Lord declares, I am not there. When one clearly understands one's constitutional position, everything becomes manifest. False egoistic acceptance of things conditions one, whereas acceptance of things as they are makes one liberated. The example given in the previous verse is applicable here. Due to absorption of one's identity in his money, when the money is lost, he thinks that he is also lost. But actually, he is not identical with the money, nor does the money belong to him. So there is no hanta or mamata in reality with that money. When the actual situation is revealed, we understand that the money does not belong to any individual person or living entity, nor is it produced by man. Ultimately, the money is a property of the Supreme Lord, and there is no question of its being lost. But as long as one falsely thinks, I am the enjoyer or I am the Lord, this concept of life continues and one remains conditioned. As soon as this false ego is eliminated, one is liberated. As confirmed in the Bhagavatam, situation in one's real constitutional position is called mukti or liberation. 17. Devahutirvacha. Purusham prakritir brahman. Navimanchati karhicha. Anyonya pashrayatvacha ityadvad anayoh prabho. Sri Devahuti inquired, my dear Brahmana, does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Since one is attracted to the other eternally, How is that separation possible? Nanu bhaktaihi api jnana vyakhyadibhihi moksha durlabha eva iti atra yuktimaha purusham अन्योन्येति पुरुषः शक्तिमत्वात् विश्वसृष्ट्यादिलीलार्थं स्वशक्तिं प्रकृतिमपि आश्रयते प्रकृतिरपि शक्तित्वात् स्वीयं पुरुषम् आश्रयते एव इति अर्थः द्वयोर् एकतरस्य नश्वरत्वे विमुञ्चत् नाट् विमुञ्चत् विमुञ्चत् नाम विमञ्चतु नाम तच्चन इत्याह नित्यत्वात्. So even the devotees, there's an objection here. Even for devotees of the Supreme Lord, not Vyakhyadi, this is wrong. This is Vairagyadi. Yeah. Moksha Durlabha eva. Devhuti Devi now brings an objection that even for devotees, liberation is very rarely attained, would be very rarely attained. Even with Jnana, Vairagya and so on. And she gives a logical argument for that. Anyonya apashrayatva. Purushaha shaktimatvam. Because the Purusha is potent, he requires the Prakriti, which is his own potency, in order to engage in the pastimes of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. Prakriti, being the potency, certainly takes shelter of her Purusha. So if one of that is lost, then the other cannot exist. Even if one were to say that one of them is temporary, then it would be impossible to give up. But that is also not the case, because eternally this arrangement is there. Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is that separation possible? Devhuti, the mother of Kapiladeva, here makes her first inquiry. Although one may understand that spirit, soul, and matter are different, their actual separation is not possible either by philosophical speculation or by proper understanding. The spirit soul is a marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, and matter is the external potency of the Lord. The two eternal potencies have somehow or other been combined, and since it is so difficult to separate one from the other, how is it possible for the individual soul to become liberated? By practical experience, one can see that when the soul is separated from the body has no real existence. And when the body is separated from the soul, one cannot perceive the existence of the soul. As long as the soul and the body are combined, we can understand that there is life. But when they are separated, there is no manifested existence of the body or the soul. This question asked by Devhuti of Kapiladev is more or less impelled by the philosophy of voidism. The voidists say that consciousness is a product of a combination of matter, and that as soon as the consciousness is gone, the material combination dissolves, and therefore there is ultimately nothing but voidness. This absence of consciousness is called nirvana in Mayavada philosophy. यथा गन्धस्य भूमिश्च न भावो व्यतिरेकतः अपां रसस्य च यथा बुद्धेः परस्य च. As there is no separate existence of the earth and its aroma, or of water and its taste, there cannot be any separate existence of intelligence and consciousness. व्यतिरेकतः भावः सत्ता न अस्ति गन्धस्य कदाचित् उपक्षय दर्शनात् दृष्टान्तरम् अपामिति बुद्धेः प्रकृतेः परस्य पुरुषस्य. There is no separate existence for fragrance and the earth. You don't see any one of them being destroyed and the other existing. Another example, water and taste. Like that, intelligence. Intelligence here refers to Prakriti. And consciousness, that refers to the Purusha. The example is given here that anything material has an aroma. The flower, the earth, everything has an aroma. If the aroma is separated from the matter cannot be identified. If there's no taste to water, water has no meaning. If there's no heat in the fire has no meaning. That means they don't exist. Similarly, when there is want of intelligence, spirit has no meaning. 19. Akartuh karmabandhoyam purushasya yada ashrayah guneshu satsu prakrite kaivalyam teshvatah katham. Hence, even though he is the passive performer of all activities, how can there be freedom for the soul as long as material nature acts on him and binds him? Tatah kim. So then what is the problem? Ataha. She says, akartuhu ye gunaha asheha yasya saha. Karma bandha is sheltered by the gunas. Teshu prakriter guneshu satsu purushasya jivasya. Because the gunas of Prakriti exist, therefore the jiva, he engages in various activities here, even though he is himself akarta. Ateva heto katham kaivalyam. So where is the question of kaivalya or isolation or freedom from matter for that Purusha? See, the point is this. The Purusha here refers to the Jivatma. The Jivatma is actually akartu. He doesn't perform any activities by himself, but still he is bound to karmic reactions. He is bound to activities which bring about karmic reactions. So under this complex environment, where is the question of freedom? Although the living entity desires freedom from the contamination of matter, he is not given release. Actually, as soon as a living entity puts himself under the control of the modes of material nature, his acts are influenced by the qualities of material nature and he becomes passive. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai. The living entity acts according to the qualities or modes of material nature. He falsely thinks that he is acting, but unfortunately he is passive. In other words, he has no opportunity to get out of the control of material nature because it is already conditioned. It has already conditioned him. In Bhagavad Gita, it is also stated that it is very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. One may try in different ways to think that everything is void in the ultimate issue, that there is no God, and that even if the background of everything is spirit, it is impersonal. This speculation may go on, but actually it is very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. Devahuti poses the question that although one may speculate in many ways, where is liberation as long as one is under the spell of material nature? The answer is also found in Bhagavad Gita 7.14. Only one who has surrendered himself unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna, Mameva ye prapadyante, can be freed from the clutches of Maya. Since Devahuti is gradually coming to the point of surrender, her questions are very intelligent. How can one be liberated? How can one be in a pure state of spiritual existence as long as he is strongly held by the modes of material nature? This is also an indication to the false meditator. There are many so-called meditators who think, I am the supreme spirit, soul. I am conducting the activities of material nature. Under my direction, the sun is moving and the moon is rising. They think that by such contemplation or meditation, they can become free, but it is seen that just 3 minutes after finishing such nonsensical meditation, they're immediately captured by the modes of material nature. Immediately after this, after his high-sounding meditation, the meditator becomes thirsty and wants to smoke or drink. He's under the strong grip of material nature, yet he thinks that he is already freed from the clutches of Maya. This question of Devahuti is for such a person who falsely claims that he is everything, that ultimately everything is void, and that there are no sinful or pious activities. These are all atheistic inventions. Actually, unless a living entity surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of God, as instructed in Bhagavad Gita, there is no liberation or freedom from the clutches of Maya. 20. Kvachit tattva marshena nivrittam bhayamulbana anivritta nimittatvat panah pratyavatisthate. Even if the great fear of bondage is avoided by mental speculation and inquiry into the fundamental principles, it may still appear again since its cause has not ceased. Ateva kvachit nivritta prayas. अतएव क्वचिन् निवृत्त प्रायस्य अपि निवृत्त प्रायस्य अपि samsara bhayasya udbhavah drishyate. So therefore we see that even though, even if a person has almost completely given up everything, still we notice fear of material existence, the fear brought about by material existence in him. Material bondage is caused by putting oneself under the control of matter because of the false ego of lording it over material nature. Bhagavad Gita 7.27 states, Ichha dvesha samabdhena. Two kinds of propensities arise in the living entity. One propensity is Ichha, which means desire to lord it over material nature or to be as great as the Supreme Lord. Everyone desires to be the greatest personality in this material world. Dvesha means envy. When one becomes envious of Krishna or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one thinks, why should Krishna be the all in all? I'm as good as Krishna. These two items, desire to be the Lord and envy of the Lord, are the beginning cause of material bondage. As long as a philosopher, salvationist, or voidist has some desire to be supreme, to be everything, or to deny the existence of God, the cause remains and there is no question of his liberation. Devahuti very intelligently says, one may theoretically analyze and say that by knowledge he has become freed, but actually as long as a cause exists, he is not free. Bhagavad Gita confirms that after performing such speculative activities for many, many births, when one actually comes to his real consciousness and surrenders into the Supreme Lord Krishna, then the fulfillment of his research in knowledge is actually achieved. There is a gulf of difference between theoretical freedom and actual freedom from material bondage. The Bhagavatam 10.14.4 says that if one gives up the auspicious path of devotional service and simply tries to know things by speculation, one wastes his valuable time. Klishyanti ye kevala bodha labdhaye. The result of such a labor of love is simply labor. There is no other result. The labor of speculation is ended only by exhaustion. The example is given that there is no benefit in husking the skin of an empty paddy. The rice is already gone. Similarly, simply by the speculative process, one cannot be freed from material bondage, for the cause still exists. One has to nullify the cause, and then the effect will be nullified. This is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the following verses. Yes.
Prabhu, when this Ichha Dvesh is explained, so you once told that initially we desired that we will serve Krishna in material existence. And here Ichha is explained as desire to be the greatest. So I was trying to compare that if I want to serve the Lord in material existence, how I desired that I want to be greatest.
Because material existence is the only space you have where you can lord it over. In the spiritual world, you cannot lord it over. So if you want to serve Krishna and lord it over, you want your private space, that is the same as desire to lord it over. So for that you are given material nature. Here is the environment wherein you can have your private space. Within that you can be as great as Krishna himself. So that space everyone wants. All the conditioned souls want.
Mm-hmm. Lording it over means I want to control things.
It should be according to my taste.
Okay.
That conception.
Okay, bro.
All right, 21, 22, 23. 21. Sri Bhagavan Vacha. Animitta nimitteena swadharmena malatmana tivraya mai bhaktya cha shuddha samhritaya chiram. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one can get liberation by seriously discharging devotional service unto me and thereby hearing for a long time about me or from me. By thus executing one's prescribed duties, there will be no reaction and one will be freed from the contamination of matter. 22. ज्ञानेन दृष्टतत्वेन वैराग्येण बलीयसा तपोयुक्तेन योगेन तीव्रेण आत्मसमाधिना. This devotion service has to be performed strongly in perfect knowledge and with transcendental vision. One must be strongly renounced and must engage in austerity and perform mystic yoga in order to be firmly fixed in self-absorption. 23. Prakriti purushasyeha dakhyamana tvaharnisham tiro bhavitri shanakair agner yonir ivaranihi. The influence of material nature has covered the living entity, and thus it is as if the living entity were always in a blazing fire. But by the process of seriously discharging devotional service, this influence can be removed just as wooden sticks which cause a fire are themselves consumed by it. He Mataha, my dear mother, na prakritihi jivasya bandha hetuhu. Prakriti is not the actual cause for the conditioning of the jiva. Kintu tadiya gunadhyasa eva. Rather, it is the superimposition of the modes of material nature on the jivatma that is the cause. Such a avidyakrita eva. And that superimposition of the modes of material nature is caused by avidya. Ateva avidya nivritto mokshaha ghatate. And therefore, when avidya is removed, then there is a possibility of moksha. Kvachin bhaya udbhavahatu sadhana vaikalya. Sometimes generation of that fear is due to a slackening of sadhana. Ityabhipretya sadhana atishayam kathayan pariharati. So then it describes about being firmly fixed in spiritual practice, sadhana. And he answers the question posed by Mother Devabhuti. Nimittam phalam tat abhavaha animittameva. When one carries out one's prescribed duties without desiring the fruits of those prescribed duties. Nimittam pravartakaha yatra. So when one carries out one's prescribed duties without being impelled by a desire to attain the fruits, the scripturally designated fruits of those prescribed duties, then amalaha shuddha atma antahkaranam yatah syat. Then his mind will become pure. So one has to engage in one's swadharma without a desire for the scripturally designated fruits of those prescribed duties, and thus develop a pure mind. And with that mind, one has to execute other elements of sadhana. Tivraya. So bhavadeva sarvataha tejas vinya. Shuddha samhritaya madkatha shravana paripushtaya. Mayi bhaktiyacha. And one should execute devotional service to the Supreme Lord that is thoroughly nourished by hearing about me. By hearing for a long time about me or from me. And that is powerful in every way, naturally. Prakriti linga dehaha purushasya epi sadhaneki dakhyamana tiro bhavati. So when the subtle body of such a person, which is made up of Prakriti, when the Purushas or the contingent souls, subtle body which is made up of Prakriti, is destroyed by being burnt up by this combination of activities which is considered here to be sadhana or the appropriate spiritual practice. Then Agnehi iti Aranhi kashtam. Agnehi yada kashtadeva utpadya kashtam dahati. Tathaiva jnanam lingadehad utpadya tammeva dahati. Then just as fire comes out from this arani, just as wooden sticks which cause a fire are themselves consumed by it, just as fire comes out of the wooden stick and then burns those wooden sticks. So like that, spiritual realization comes out of the subtle body and destroys the subtle body, burns it up. Sridhar Swami comments in this connection that by association with material nature alone, one does not become conditioned. Conditional life begins only after one is infected by the modes of material nature. If someone is in contact with the police department, that does not mean that he is a criminal. As long as one does not commit criminal acts, even though there is a police department, he is not punished. Similarly, the liberated soul is not affected, although he is in the material nature. Even the Supreme Personality of Godhead is supposed to be in association with material nature when he descends, but he is not affected. One has to act in such a way that in spite of being in the material nature, he is not affected by contamination. Although the lotus flower is in association with water, it does not mix with the water. That is how one has to live, as described here by the Personality of Godhead, Kapila Deva. Animitta nimittena swadharmena amalatmana. One can be liberated from all adverse circumstances simply by seriously engaging in devotional service. How this devotional service develops and becomes mature is explained here. In the beginning, one has to perform his prescribed duties with a clean mind. Clean consciousness means Krishna consciousness. One has to perform his prescribed duties in Krishna consciousness. There is no necessity of changing one's prescribed duties. One simply has to act in Krishna consciousness. In discharging Krishna conscious duties, one should determine whether by his professional or occupational duties, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is satisfied. In another place in the Bhagavatam, it is said, Svanashtitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. Everyone has some prescribed duties to perform, but the perfection of such duties will be reached only if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is satisfied by such actions. For example, Arjuna's prescribed duty was to fight, and the perfection of his fighting was tested by the satisfaction of Krishna. Krishna wanted him to fight, and when he fought for the satisfaction of the Lord, that was the perfection of his professional devotional duty. On the other hand, when contrary to the wish of Krishna, he was not willing to fight, that was imperfect. If one wants to perfect his life, he should discharge his prescribed duties for the satisfaction of Krishna. One must act in Krishna consciousness, for such action will never produce any reaction. Nimitta nimittena. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Yagyarthat karmanon yatra. All activity should be performed simply for yagya or the satisfaction of Vishnu. Anything done otherwise, without the satisfaction of Vishnu or yagya, produces bondage. So here it is also prescribed by Kapila Muni that one can transcend material entanglement by acting in Krishna consciousness, which means seriously engaging in devotional service. This serious devotional service can develop by hearing for long periods of time. Chanting and hearing is the beginning of the process of devotional service. One should associate with devotees and hear from them about the Lord's transcendental appearance, activities, disappearance, instructions, etc. There are two kinds of Shruti or scripture. One is spoken by the Lord, and the other is spoken about the Lord and his devotees. Bhagavad Gita is the former, and Srimad Bhagavatam the latter. One must hear these scriptures repeatedly from reliable sources in order to become fixed in serious devotional service. Through engagement in such devotional service, one becomes freed from the contamination of Maya. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that hearing about the Supreme Personality of God cleanses the heart of all contamination caused by the influence of the three modes of material nature. By continuous regular hearing, the effects of the contamination of lust and greed to enjoy or lord it over material nature diminish. And when lust and greed diminish, one then becomes situated in the mode of goodness. This is the stage of Brahman realization or spiritual realization. In this way, one becomes fixed on the transcendental platform. Remaining fixed on the transcendental platform is liberation from material entanglement. Question.
Prabhu, when it is said that doing one's professional activities, professional duties or occupational duties for Lord satisfaction, so by giving the results of that activity as financial contribution, this ensures Lord satisfaction, or there is more to it?
One has to have a desire to make spiritual progress. These things come in Bhagavad Gita itself. One has to have the right attitude. Then he will develop Vairagya, Vidya, and his Vishnu Bhakti will increase. So that is how we know. That is the real purpose for which these duties are given. Okay, let's proceed. Devotional service and Krishna consciousness cannot be performed blindly, but those professional activities have to be sinless though. Devotional service and Krishna consciousness cannot be performed blindly due to material emotion or mental concoction. It is specifically mentioned here that one has to perform devotional service in full knowledge by visualizing the absolute truth. We can understand about the absolute truth by evolving transcendental knowledge, and the result of such transcendental knowledge will be manifested by renunciation. That renunciation is not temporary or artificial, but is very strong. It is said that development of Krishna consciousness is exhibited by proportional material detachment or vairagya. If one does not separate himself from material enjoyment, it is to be understood that he is not advancing in Krishna consciousness. Renunciation in Krishna consciousness is so strong that it cannot be deviated by any attractive illusion. One has to perform devotional service in full tapasya or austerity. One should fast on the 2 Ekadashi days, which fall on the 11th day of the waxing and waning moon, and on the birthdays of Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many such fasting days. Yogena means by controlling the senses and mind. Yoga Indriya Samyamaha. Yogena implies that one is seriously absorbed in the self and is able, by development of knowledge, to understand his constitutional position in relationship with the superself. In this way, one becomes fixed in devotional service and his faith cannot be shaken by any material allurement. Yes.
So in the previous verse, it is mentioned that by regular hearing, one can diminish his lust. So we also hear that when someone asked Prabhupada that when my lust will go, then Prabhupada said that is Govinda Richa.
That is?
That is Govinda Richa, the Lord's desire.
Okay.
So is there any connection here?
We do things properly, then Lord Govinda will want. Lord Govinda wants everyone to lust, anger, greed to go away. So then it will go away. To convince Krishna. There's no mechanical process for it. That is the point. Okay, let's move on. This purport, I'll just read out this purport. Fire is conserved in wooden sticks, and when circumstances are favorable, the fire is ignited. But the wooden sticks, which are the cause of the fire, are also consumed by the fire if it is properly dealt with. Similarly, the living entity's conditional life of material existence is due to his desire to lord it over material nature and due to his envy of the Supreme Lord. Thus, his main diseases are that he wants to be one with the Supreme Lord or he wants to become the Lord of material nature. The karmis try to utilize the resources of material nature and thus become its lord and enjoy sense gratification. And the jnanis, salvationists, who have become frustrated in enjoying the material resources, want to become one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or merge into the impersonal effulgence. These two diseases are due to material contamination. Material contamination can be consumed by devotional service because in devotional service, these two diseases, namely the desire to lord it over material nature and the desire to become one with the Supreme Lord, are absent. Therefore, the cause of material existence is at once consumed by the careful discharge of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. A devotee in full Krishna consciousness appears superficially to be a great karmi, always working. But the inner significance of the devotee's activities is that they are meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is called bhakti or devotional service. Arjuna was apparently a fighter, but when by his fighting he satisfied the senses of Lord Krishna, he became a devotee. Since a devotee also engages in philosophical research to understand the Supreme Person as he is, his activities may thus appear to be like those of a mental speculator. But actually, he is trying to understand the spiritual nature and transcendental activities. Thus, although the tendency for philosophical speculation exists, the material effects of fruitive activities and empiric speculation do not, because this activity is meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All right, so I'll stop with this. Okay, before I leave, so some students I'm going to convert them into listeners. I already put a notice in the group, so I will individually write to them. Okay, it simply means that for assessments, those who will be designated as listeners, they will have to work through self-paced Bhakti-vaibhava, which is another arrangement by Paratattva Catuspathi, Padmahukanimai Prabhu. We had a detailed discussion with him on how to do that. So I'll work out certain details. I will write to some of the students who I'm going to convert into listeners. So they'll have more freedom to do assessments when they want. BOEX assessment only, but you'll have more freedom to do when you want. It is self-paced. Assessments, self-paced. But everything else should continue. All of you should, I expect all of you to attend the classes and even the assessment preparations. That means close work, analogies, and 4-minute presentations. And before third canto, I'm going to introduce chapter summary presentations. This will be there for everyone. But the actual BOEX exams, these listeners have to do it through the other method, which means they will be added into some other Telegram group. Okay. I'll write separately to them, and those who are not clear, they can directly discuss with me. Okay.